My sister's dead, he said, planning her funeral. Inside the casket, a stranger. My niece handed me a note, "You're next." I ran, but he was faster. What's going on? Who is this woman? I arrived at the funeral home after hearing the news about my sister's death, and when I looked inside the casket, I saw an unfamiliar face. Where's my sister? Feeling incredibly bewildered, my niece approached me and gave me a little folded note. The instant I saw it, a wave of dread washed over me, and I grabbed her hand, trying to get out of there. Right then, I heard my brother-in-law shouting from behind me. "Why are you here? I told you not to come." He stared at me with a hateful look, forcibly pulled me away from my niece, and practically shoved me out of the funeral home. Why are they having a funeral for someone I don't know? Is my sister all right? Following all of this, I discovered something truly terrifying. I'm Nadine, and I'm 34. I married my husband, whom I'd known since high school 2 years ago. My sister, Penelope, who was 2 years older, had married my brother-in-law 7 years ago, and they lived together with Tara, who was 5. Penelope and I grew up in a home with just one parent, and our dad died in a car crash not long after I got married. Penelope handled all the paperwork related to the inheritance, and I remember thinking I could always depend on her. Penelope's family, who had originally lived with my father in his house, inherited the home and continued to reside there. The first anniversary of my father's passing came and went, and I slowly went back to my routine, and before I could even realize it, about 6 months had gone by. The other day, I was incredibly busy with a lot of different obligations, which made it tough to spend time with my dear sister, and then I got a phone call from someone I didn't expect. The caller said my sister had passed away and that they were sorry for my loss. What? I thought. What are you talking about? You haven't contacted me in ages. The person said, "Penelope is your sister, isn't she? Her address is your parents' home." It turned out to be an old friend from high school on the phone. She works at a funeral home, and when she saw the address on the death certificate, she reached out to me figuring I must be heartbroken. They asked if the chief mourner was named Damien. Yes, they were. Since I've never met my sister and didn't know her last name, I didn't recognize it when I picked her up from the hospital. It was strange that she didn't recognize the name. After hanging up with my friend, I called my sister's cell phone, really wishing this was all a mistake, but it went straight to voicemail. This can't be real, I thought. Panicking, I immediately tried to call my brother-in-law, but it also went to voicemail, so I left a message and asked him to call me. What if my sister really was gone? I felt like my calm, happy life I'd just found was being shattered with a loud crash. My heart was just getting more and more broken as the minutes ticked by. After that, my brother-in-law went completely silent, so after my workday ended, I left a message on his machine, saying I was on my way over, and my phone instantly started ringing. "I'm tied up, what do you want?" I heard about my sister, that she's gone, but that isn't real, is it? Oh, really? I figured he would immediately refute it, but my brother-in-law paused for a beat like he was struggling to speak. What? I hadn't anticipated that response at all. Holding my breath, waiting for him to continue, my brother-in-law finally spoke. "We just had a small disagreement and Penelope got upset and we were arguing and she tumbled down the steps on her own. Then she died. You're not telling the truth, are you? I can't wrap my head around it. Why didn't you let me know? Before my sister passed, she asked me not to inform anyone if anything happened. She probably didn't want others to know she died because of her own carelessness." My brother-in-law shared that, out of consideration for my sister's wishes, they decided to keep the funeral limited to immediate family. Because of this, he'd kept it secret, even from his own family members. "Regardless, you still should have called me. Regardless, I'm still going to pay my last respects. Don't even think about going to the funeral. That's what your sister wanted. Even if I did tell you, you couldn't go since you don't even know the funeral home's location. Okay, bye." My brother-in-law, who didn't appear to be sad, sounded strangely annoyed. I felt a little strange, but I figured there was no reason to keep dwelling on it, so I chose not to return the call. It's like I'm trapped in a terrible dream. This unexpected tragedy is just too much. I just couldn't wrap my head around the fact that my sister, who I adored, was gone, so I stayed rooted on the bench for a time, completely unable to budge. I remained there for about 60 minutes, and then slowly I got to my feet and began to walk. The image of my sister's last smile flickers in my mind, visible one moment, gone the next, and my eyesight starts to become unclear, with tears starting to roll down my cheeks. "Oh, sister, why did you have to go so soon? I never dreamed I'd lose my sister in this way. I hadn't been able to sleep at all the night before the funeral." My brother-in-law asked me not to come, but I absolutely needed to say a final farewell to my sister, so I asked the friend who had told me about her passing for the funeral home's location, and I went. "Just let me say goodbye to you one final time, please." When I slipped quietly into the room, my brother-in-law was nowhere to be found because the service hadn't started yet. A friend of mine, who was on a break from work, came to be with me. I can't cope with any of this. Your brother-in-law is in another room speaking with the monks. Now might be a good time to say a final farewell. I asked a friend who was helping with the funeral arrangements to lead me to the coffin where my sister was lying. The older sister in the photograph has a huge, radiant smile, like she is talking to me. After all, my sister is gone forever. I desperately wanted to say a proper farewell in person, so I peered inside the casket, and there was a woman I'd never met lying peacefully. Who is this woman? She resembles my sister, but it's not her. What on earth is happening? What? Right after I stepped back from the coffin, my 5-year-old niece quietly gave me a balled-up piece of paper. This unexpected gesture took me by surprise, but upon unfolding it, it turned out to be a regular advertisement for a place to rent storage. What's the point of this? She said that if I didn't do what Daddy said, I'd end up in there too. What are you talking about? Nevertheless, the next story my niece shared immediately erased any of my uncertainty. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and I had this gut feeling that something was seriously amiss, so I grabbed my niece's hand and attempted to bolt from the funeral home. But my brother-in-law saw this and came running after me. What are you doing? I told you not to be here. My brother-in-law quickly caught up and seized my arm, and I froze in astonishment. I was really hopping to see my sister. Did you actually check inside the coffin? I just got here, so not yet. My brother-in-law appeared to be awfully worried about the coffin. Gradually, he got closer to me and tried to physically remove me from the building. What were you saying to Tara? She was just restless and wanted to go to the park. It wasn't lost on me that my brother-in-law looked incredibly relieved, despite the fact that the temperature wasn't warm, as a bead of sweat trickled down his face. It turns out he's definitely keeping something secret. We have to get Tara away from here immediately. I softly glanced at my niece and gently held her hand, and she gave me a little nod as if she already knew what was happening. After that, my brother-in-law aggressively snatched my niece's hand, pulling her away from me. I will not allow you to take Tara from me. Get out of here right now. If she doesn't leave willingly, I'll have the funeral home staff throw you out. When I saw my brother-in-law speaking forcefully and his eyes showing his anger, I knew staying there any longer was pointless, so I was forced to leave, leaving my niece with a worried look. That was quite a confrontation. Are you hurt? I'm fine. Also, could you please keep an eye on my niece? I understand. Trust me, my friend assured me. If it were her, she'd be at the funeral the whole time to watch over my niece. As I walked outside, I looked again at the advertisement for storage space my niece gave me earlier. And while I was looking at it, something suddenly occurred to me. Is this the place Tara mentioned earlier, as in, this is where we'd go if something bad was happening? I quickly took action to uncover what my brother-in-law was concealing. Honestly, the story I heard from my niece earlier was unbelievable. The truth is, the woman in the coffin had been at his house before and had been staying there for a bit. Be good friends with Daddy, they were even kissing. She actually said that. Then from that point forward, my sister vanished, and when Tara inquired, he became enraged. Absolutely not, my sister is gone from this earth. I pushed away the unsettling thoughts, rushed to the parking area, and drove to the warehouse indicated on the pamphlet. It was an isolated location, somewhat distant from any housing. Upon arriving at the warehouse's office, I presented my identification, described the circumstances, and the individual there, after witnessing my grim demeanor, grudgingly provided me the key. Stepping inside, I immediately felt the moist, disagreeable air. As I sifted through the clutter, I spotted my sister lying lifeless, covered by her possessions. Penelope, hang in there. I immediately went to her, picked her up, and peeled off the duct tape securing her mouth. Slowly, her eyes opened, and she said, I was frightened, and embraced me, her body frigid. I'm thankful you survived. What transpired? Answering my query, my sister began to tell me what occurred. My sister, who found out about my brother-in-law's infidelity after a family camping trip, had come to leave items at the storage facility and questioned him. At first, my brother-in-law hesitantly admitted to the affair, but possibly because he thought he could no longer conceal it, he suddenly erupted in anger and attacked her, resulting in my sister losing consciousness. When she recovered, she was confined within this warehouse. The whole situation felt utterly hopeless, with the door secured from the outside and my sister bound, unable to even cry out. The knowledge that my sister had endured such intense suffering and terror filled me with a rage directed at my brother-in-law. They acted as though she was gone, and my brother-in-law even orchestrated a funeral for her. Upon hearing this news, my sister's expression was completely vacant, as though she couldn't process it. When I explained that they were pretending it was her funeral, my sister covered her mouth with her hand and murmured, "What a person. I refuse to allow you to experience such emotional pain. I will make sure he receives the appropriate punishment." I was wiping my coat when I was wearing on my shirt. My older sister was shivering, and then someone seized my shoulder with a brutal grip. I spun around, completely stunned, and saw my brother-in-law standing there. I followed you to see where you're going. Do not do anything reckless. If you choose to obstruct me, would you also prefer to join her in the afterlife? Cut the jokes. I won't let you do as you please. There's no chance you can defeat my strength. My brother-in-law used rope to bind me, attempting to lock me in the warehouse alongside my sister as I fought with all my might. Penelope's funeral is almost over, so if I tell you, I'll toss you all deep into the mountains and feed you to animals. I'm acting sick and snuck out of the funeral, so I must return quickly. Hold on. Explain why you lied about my sister and held a funeral for someone else. My brother-in-law, believing we were trapped for good, burst out laughing and began speaking. Once I'd secured Penelope, I brought the woman I was seeing in to watch Tara, but she's got a mind of her own. She got hold of me during our argument, and I responded by kicking her down the steps. My brother-in-law said the woman I'd been involved with was still alive immediately after the fall. That's when the idea struck me. Everyone around me believed Penelope was dead following the service, then eliminating the actual Penelope later on wouldn't be an issue. That's the reason my brother-in-law waited for the woman he'd been seeing to pass away before he called for help. On top of that, she has no relatives. She seemed to think it worked out well because no one would search for her even if she vanished. A grin spread across my brother-in-law's face as he happily described his plans. It's awful. No, wait. I'm a real mastermind. Anyway, that's all for now. It'll be problematic if you make a scene, so I'll deal the final blow. After sharing this sickening, terrifying tale, my brother-in-law slowly approached me and my sister, a weapon in hand that he'd clearly readied beforehand. His gaze is intense, though the subtle smile on his face could only be considered unsettling. I'll put an end to this before you start yelling. The moment my brother-in-law brandished the object, the cops burst into the building and yelled, "Drop it right now." I was truly relieved they showed up when they did. Just to be safe, I contacted the authorities the instant I located my sister. I figured that would calm him down, but then he started putting on a show for the police, whining and carrying on. To be honest, my wife had vanished a bit ago, but thankfully she's now safe and sound. Who in the world would stoop to something like this? Seriously. Who are you even talking about? Oh, she's so frightened and bewildered, officer. I'll do whatever it takes to assist you in catching the person responsible. This is exactly what happens when you can't keep your mouth shut. My rage surged because of my brother-in-law's awful actions regarding the fact that she just died, as he was taking advantage of the partner he cheated with and trying to get rid of Penelope too. Oh yeah, that's right. Okay, I suppose I can pitch in and help catch the guilty party too. Huh. Every word you uttered before the police arrived was recorded. I handed the police officer the voice recorder containing our conversation. Huh, what are you doing? Oh wait, hold on a sec. It's not my fault at all. It's all just a mistake. I'm the one who called the police. Let me explain. My brother-in-law was wailing and yelling, "I'm not going with the police." But they were completely indifferent and placed him into a police car. Following that, I told the officers the whole story. Someone else's funeral is currently happening at the funeral home, pretending it's my sister's. Get over there right away, please. As soon as they heard what had happened to me, they hurried right over to the funeral home. My sister was able to speak, but she was so fragile that they took her to the hospital in an ambulance. I returned to the funeral home because my sister was concerned about Tara. Once I got there, I observed that Tara's friend was remaining close to her. Tara seemed anxious. The moment she saw me, Tara ran over to me and gave me a hug. Her whole body was shaking, and her eyes were overflowing with tears. Incredible, that was frightening. You were incredibly resilient. Where's Mom? Is she all right? I found your mom. She's okay. Let's go to the hospital where Mom is. When we were finished camping, Mom and Dad went to the warehouse to unload our stuff, but only Dad came back. He mentioned that she had to work unexpectedly, but Dad was perspiring so much it was unsettling. That struck me as odd, plus he had a really strange expression on his face. Oh, I understand. I assume you were concerned. But why did you have a flyer with you today? It was at our house. I located it at home. I then checked out the map on it, and I figured I would sneak out during the funeral to go look at it. I figured my mom might be there. Even a 5-year-old knew something wasn't right, and she was attempting to assist her mother. There was no way for Tara to search for Penelope on her own, but I am astonished at how much bravery it took for her to do that. I felt a pang of sadness, thinking about how long the days must have felt for my niece during the time my sister didn't come home. She must have been so uneasy. As soon as we got to the hospital, Tara quickly went over to my sister when she saw her. I felt bad that I caused Tara to be concerned. My sister gently stroked Tara's tear-stained face and kept smiling as she repeated, "It's all right now." She seemed so joyful, and I felt a huge sense of relief wash over me. I was incredibly thankful that I hadn't lost my sister. My sister got medical care at the hospital, and her health slowly improved, eventually letting her leave the hospital after roughly a week. My brother-in-law was taken into custody, facing accusations of abandoning my sister and causing the death of the woman he was having an affair with without providing any assistance. From this point forward, he'll be burdened with immense guilt and live in a bleak prison. My sister, of course, feels this way too. My sister ended her marriage to my brother-in-law and was awarded custody of my niece. I heard that my brother-in-law was paid $30,000 in compensation from the money he had saved to give to the woman he was having an affair with. I chatted with my husband, and we agreed it wouldn't be ideal for my sister and niece to live on their own after leaving the hospital, so we made the decision to all live together after she was released. Right now, I'm enjoying a truly happy life, surrounded by my wonderful husband, my dear sister, and my adorable niece.